Roll call, please.
Commissioners Markham, you're muted, Commissioner Markham.
Here, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Weird.
Commissioner Middleton,
Here.
Gershenson,
Here.
McGillivray,
Here.
Quarles,
Here.
Powell,
Here.
Long,
Here.
Howell,
Here.
Zach.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I need a motion for the approval of the minutes from August 26th, 2020. Commissioner McGillivray, supported by Commissioner Long. Are there any questions about the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed, say nay. Motion carries. I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended, including the item number 9. And I do apologize to the committee members about late notification, but this is time sensitive. We all want this to happen, so forgive me, and we sent it out as fast as we could. Okay, so motion to approve the agenda. Commissioner Quarles, supported by Commissioner Kowal. Are there any questions about the agenda? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, say nay. Thank you. The agenda is approved. Do I have any public comment? Andrea, are you with me?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning. Your public comment lines are open and stable. There are no callers and there are no online submissions.
Thank you. Hearing and seeing that there is no public comment, I am going to close public comment. Okay, and then we have communications. I need a motion to approve the communications. Commissioner Markham, supported by Commissioner Long. Okay, so are there any questions about communications? Commissioner Quarles.
Yes, item F, the Health and Human Service, Community and Home Improvement Division Program. Is that a report that's submitted every year?
We do a grant application for our CDBG funding, if that's what you're talking about, item F.
Yes, item F.
Okay, we do that every year as we submit the, the grant application. And so it's there. And I did ask that hopefully Carrie Reith and Rudy Hobbs are here to answer any questions about it.
Madam Chair, real quick, just to why that is a report. Under your rules, the chair of the board is authorized to sign a grant application between meetings if it's time sensitive. And that was the case in this instance. So that's why you're receiving this as a communication rather than a resolution for the grant application.
Thank you.
And that was going to be my next question. I thought that this grant usually came as a resolution so that we discuss it and know where it would be used. So I assume there's no changes in the communities that will be using the block grant funding and the type of programs that it'll support.
Do I have Carrie Reed? I know Carrie, you're on the phone.
Good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, Carrie, we can.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, this 2020 application for Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnerships Program, and the Emergency Solutions Program, we function with a partnership of 53 communities, and each year the communities submit their applications for their priority programs that they want to use the Community Development Block Grant money for. And we provide them a formula allocation, and they submit an application with those activities in it. So every year that does change. If that answers your question, Commissioner Quarles?
Yes, it does.
Do I have any other questions about this? I would like to ask, I see our Deputy County Exec Rudy Hobbs, and I know that Carrie's on. Are there any particular changes in this plan? You know, explain the difference in the affordable housing, you know, some of the things that are a little bit different than they have been in the past, please.
I can.
Yeah, you can take the lead and I'll finish it up.
Sure, okay. You'll see a difference in how the home funds are going to be allocated. The Home Investment Partnerships Program typically has a large housing rehabilitation budget melded into it, and you're going to see our typical 10% administration, our typical 15% for the federally mandated CHOTO set aside, and another 5% for CHOTO operating. Those CHOTO activities are all going to be dedicated from the grant to rental housing, affordable rental housing. And then we have reserved a new pool of funding of $500,000 for rental housing exclusively out of the budget. So that is a change, Commissioner.
Hey, can I just also add that I think it's important for people, for all commissioners to note that, you know, that our housing division is currently in a voluntary compliance agreement with Fair Housing. So a lot of the activities, direction that we're pursuing, that we're going, you know, the direction that we're going in is as a result of our voluntary compliance agreement that we have with Fair Housing. Just to kind of walk you back a bit of our fair housing came into the county a couple of years back, you know, and really cited the county on some of the practices that we've had, and have asked us to start to look at, you know, how we use our home dollars in a different way. So, you know, a lot of the things that we're doing is, you know, are things, you know, working in collaboration with HUD and their Fair Housing Department to ensure that we're meeting and checking the boxes of the voluntary compliance agreement with HUD, because what we don't want to do is be outside of that voluntary compliance agreement and put our housing division in jeopardy.
Okay, I saw Commissioner Quarles first and then followed by Commissioner Middleton.
No, I can pass. I'll pass.
Thank you, Commissioner Middleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rudy, in the past, the goal was to keep stable communities, and we had these dollars go to fixing roofs and things of people so that they could stay in their homes. Are we shifting our policy now to rental property and kind of ignoring the stable community emphasis that we had in the past?
Well, I think there's a shift, yes. And again, this goes back to the voluntary compliance agreement. And just to kind of give you a bit of history, and this is, you know, kind of where Fair Housing comes in. Fair Housing felt that the practice that we've had in terms of our significant investment in stable communities, that we were ignoring the affordable housing rental portion of the housing equation. And because we were so out of balance, Fair Housing came in and literally shared that, they didn't feel like that was they felt like it was a biased practice. And this really kind of goes back to the history of how people become homeowners, right? I mean, all the way, and I think we all know this, there's always been a very, it's been biased in terms of, who can be a homeowner and who can't. And so Fair Housing came in and shared with us that because of our significant investment in homeowners, we were ignoring a very critical piece of the equation around affordable housing, and they have asked us to at least use 20% of our home dollars for affordable housing. And so that's what we're doing to comply with the Fair Housing Department in HUD. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Do I have any other questions? Okay, thank you, Rudy Hobbs and Carrie Reef, for being with us to answer these questions. So,
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Elaine,
yes, Angie.
I did have one question. I'm sorry for department lead. I just wanted to make sure that I'm understanding this. So we are either reducing the amount that we're giving for a home if they need fixing to their homes, or we eliminating that. I just want to make sure I understand what we're doing.
Reducing.
Oh,
We're not eliminating.
Okay, thank you.
We'll continue the program.
Okay, thank you. That's all I want to know. Thank you.
Okay. So questions have been answered. So let's call, let's see now. We need a roll call vote, please, on the consent agenda.
And the communications? Communications can be voiced if you want.
Okay. Communications, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed say nay. Motion carries. Now we're on the consent agenda. And I need a motion.
Madam Chair, we don't have a
I
consent.
don't have a
agenda.
consent agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry. I lost my agenda. Everything turned off. Okay, we don't have one. Now I got it. Okay, now we're on the regular agenda. Item number 1, management and budget, fiscal year 2020, third quarter financial forecast and budget amendments. I need a motion, please. Commissioner Gershenson, supported by Commissioner Kowal. And with us today, we have Lynn Sonkis and Sean Carlson. Thank you.
Good morning. So I'm going to, in your packet on PDF page 389 starts the resolution for the third quarter forecast, but I'm going to jump to the transmittal letter, which is on PDF 393 of your packet. So this gives you a summary overview of where we're standing with the third quarter forecast. And you're going to look at the first paragraph and see our overall favorability at roughly $75 million. Now, don't get too excited there because a lot of that has to do with the CARES Act funding. That is split up between receiving or forecasting approximately $45 million more in revenue, and our expenditures are showing favorability right now of around $29 million. Now, the reason for the revenue favorability has to do primarily with the CARES Act funding that the county received. The county received approximately $219 million. And that is good through the period of currently known as December 30th. It is not going to happen that we're going to expend all of those dollars by the end of September, obviously. There are a significant number of programs going through, and we just the Board of Commissioners just adopted a resolution on September 3rd, Resolution 20364, that more or less appropriated the rest of the funding of the $219 million and recognized reimbursement for previous appropriations made to the tune of $40.3 million. So that's why you're primarily seeing that favorability in the federal grant revenue section on the transmittal letter on PDF page 393. The other significant portion of that favorable revenue has to do with intergovernmental revenue, about $5.3 million in favorability. And that has to do with the making a change in their disbursement of revenue sharing for the August 31st distribution. We were scheduled to get roughly $6.4 million in revenue sharing. The state ended up replacing that and distributing roughly $9.9 million, with the caveat that that funding is to be used for COVID-related activities. So that is about $3.5 million of favorability in the revenue sharing line item. And then we, as reported with the second quarter forecast, verbally reported with the second quarter forecast report in late May 2020, we received the excess distribution, what is referred to as the local community stabilization share. That's what the state officially calls it. We know it as personal property tax loss reimbursement. They do distributions twice a year. The normal distribution for 2020 will be in October, and we'll recognize that in fiscal year 2020. Excess distributions for the previous fiscal year are realized or distributed in the subsequent May timeframe. So in late May, we received excess distribution related to 2019 of roughly $1.2 million. Now, with that overall revenue favorability on PDF 394, you'll see that charges for services revenue, that is showing unfavorable, about $2.6 million. And that's primarily reduced activity because of COVID. We're seeing less revenue flow in for court operations, and a lot of that is timing, because those amounts due to the county don't go away. It's a matter of timing. And then there's some reduced activity as it relates to COVID. For example, we have less inmates in the jail. That means less that would be related to certain offenses that make us eligible for diverted felon revenue, or some of the drug testing revenue. Some of our reimbursement of salaries related to law enforcement services are reduced, but some of that is also offset by reduced overtime that would have provided for those services. Now, on the expenditure side, the favorability is looking like $29.4 million. And a lot of that has to do with certain programs being not carried out, obviously because of COVID. We have a hiring freeze in place. We're reporting currently now less favorability in overall personnel costs. However, some of that cost is related to the pandemic and hazard pay, which we're hoping that going through the analysis that some of that will be in fact covered by CARES Act dollars that the county received. So all that said and done, if you refer to PDF 395 or even the summary page of PDF 443, you'll see that right now we're anticipating the county fund balance going down of approximately $8 million. Now, a lot of that, again, is going to be determined by how much CARES Act revenue we can actually realize based on eligible expenses incurred by 9/30. So that will dictate how much of that 219 million we can recognize. And there will also be, I'm thinking, a fairly significant carry forward that's going to need to be done related to CARES Act funding, as well as certain departments that may not have been able to carry out certain programs by the end of the fiscal year. So you'll see on that summary page and noted in the transmittal letter, there's just one department that we are watching that we'll have to make an adjustment for, the sheriff's office, with related to overtime that has happened the last couple years, and we should have expenditure favorability to be able to cover that, and we will take care of that with the year-end report. Now I'm going to go back to the resolution to note some starting on PDF 389. And most of those amendments that are reflected in Schedule A and Schedule B of this resolution have to do with offsetting amendments, either correcting a department ID, a program, offsetting between different line items. So most of those are neutral to the overall budget. Another one that's on PDF 389 in the middle is with the second quarter forecast, the board amended the second quarter forecast resolution and adopted or authorized $500,000 in funding for public information. We're just doing an amendment to recognize that we're tying that to a project ID, so we have better tracking capability as it relates to utilization of the CARES Act funding. So no change to the bottom line, it's just appropriating those dollars with an associated project ID. I will also reference a fairly significant amendment that is dealing with Schedule C of the packet. If you refer to PDF page 392, the first whereas statement that appears on that page, it references to Resolution 20202, which was a resolution to transfer divisions from within the county executive departments to move purchasing, MSU extension, Children's Village, Veterans, and Community Home Improvement to different departments within the county executive budget. So with that resolution, the resolution authorized supervisory reporting structure to change in 2020. Schedule C is moving the financial budget for those impacted divisions for 2021 through 2023. We're going to maintain the same financial reporting for 2020 to carry out the rest of the fiscal year for those divisions impacted. But Schedule C is a rather lengthy amendment to move all of the budgets to their new department structure for those fiscal years. And that's the most significant amendment. Again, it doesn't change the bottom line. It's just shifting the department ID and how it will be reported financially going forward with the new fiscal year. With that, I will open it up for any questions.
I have Commissioner Middleton first.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Lynn, on the revenue sharing, will those dollars now have to fit the COVID requirements? I mean, will we send those through Price Waterhouse to evaluate on programs where we're spending that money?
Are you talking about the Pierce Monroe and Guidehouse?
Yes.
Yes, I mean, that will be looked at, as will all of our COVID-related grant dollars, on how we determine what that $9.9 million is going to be used for. Actually, they made the distribution August 31st, and then subsequently came out with, we need to fill out this form and submit it by September 23rd so that we can acknowledge that we did receive it. If we don't submit that form back, we have to return the monies by September 30th. Obviously, we're going to return the form, and then these monies then are eligible to be used through December 30th. as it
Okay.
currently stated by the state.
Okay, that was my next question. When do we have to use the money up by? And that money has to be done, dispersed by December 31st of this year.
December 30th.
Okay, thank
The
you.
same time frame as the CARES Act dollars, and I think Sean Carlson has mentioned before, whatever, there are discussions or talks about whether that timeline will be extended or not, but currently as it stands, it's December 30th.
Okay, originally that money was scheduled to be used for general purpose, budget things. Now it's no longer can be used for that. How do we fill the gap for the things that it was originally scheduled for?
So the revenue sharing wasn't necessarily tied to specific, I'll call it programs per se. It was part of the overall general fund revenue support. So we will have some expenditure favorability for things that we're not going to incur, and it won't even be a carry forward. Within non-departmental of your packet, if you look at PDF pages 485 and 486, there are a number of items that are showing we're going to have expenditure favorability non-departmental because we're not, it's not going to be a requirement to provide. For example, $1,050,000 was budgeted to provide for a debt service payment related to ADA and life safety project. That project did not move forward, so that debt service payment will obviously not be required. There's also $3 million that is not anticipated, that will not be transferred to the capital improvement program out of the $5.5 million, and then another $3 million that would have been provided, that was budgeted for child care fund, the county's requirement for child care fund support. But we have had favorability in the past, and we are continuing to project favorability where we will not have to provide that transfer to the child care fund because of less expenditures within the child care fund, as well as some favorable revenue that they're receiving in board and care within Children's Village. So
Okay.
that should hopefully shore up some of that. But you're right that they did take away the $6.4 million that we would have gotten just for general operations, and stipulated that we were required to use the 9.9 for CARES or COVID related activities.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, next I have Commissioner Gershenson, followed by Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Commissioner Zach. Lynn, I have two questions. The Goldman Sachs donation, is that a regular thing? Is that new? Does that go to COVID-related activities, or where did that come from?
So that was actually, I'm going to refer you to the resolution. Let's see here. The resolution for that was, we received notification, and that's a one-time thing. That's not a normal occurring donation or grant. We received notification, and that was accepted administratively under the emergency powers. At the top of PDF 390, it references that a communication item went to the full board on June 25th to recognize that $275,000, and that $175 of that is to be used for PPE for faith-based organizations, and another $100,000 is for workforce initiatives for emergency supportive services. So that is like, that's one-time type funding.
So I'm just wondering, Madam Chair, if we have responded, or administration has responded, thanking Goldman Sachs. I'm assuming that's been taken care of. Yeah. Okay, thanks. I see Sean saying yes. Number two, on the overtime for the sheriff, does that happen every year? Is that more because of hazard pay, why isn't, if it happens frequently, why isn't that budgeted in?
So that has happened the last couple years, and we have incrementally increased the overtime budget, and there's more to be done there. This year, it also does play in with the addition of hazard pay, but again, we have some grant funding opportunities to helpfully cover the hazard pay. There's a pending application through the state right now to get just over $1 million related to hazard pay. There's also a roughly $5.4 million in state funding for, I'll call it regular public safety dollars related to those that were responding to COVID. Those applications are pending. We haven't heard on the award, but you're correct that their overtime budget does need to be continued to be reviewed and adjusted as needed.
Thank you.
I just want to add, Commissioner Gershenson, this is your first time on finance, but this is typical that there is unfavorability on overtime budget. And part of it is also staffing. Can they hire enough officers? And when they can't, they'll use PT&Es, and that's overtime. Okay, following, we have Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering when we would be expecting our next revenue sharing payment, and if perhaps, do we have an indication if that's going to be the same from the CARES Act funding that we'll have to spend on COVID?
So all of the distributions have been made for 2020. The August 31st payment, they did make just 6 distributions a year. All of the payments have been distributed for 2020.
Thank you.
Are you talking about 2020 or 2021? We don't know the impact yet, although I've seen indications that they're supposed to hold revenue sharing harmless, but nothing's been adopted yet at the state level.
All right, I guess we'll wait and see what happens. Thank you.
Do you want to add anything, Deputy County Exec Carlson? John?
Well, I think I just wanted to make sure on that question that Commissioner Kowal was mentioning, is that the 6th payment to Lynn's point, we received at the end of August, which was 9.9. Of course, there's paperwork that we have to fill out saying that we'll agree to the CARES Act and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to make reference to that. And then to Lynn's point that she just articulated as well, that it looked like Lansing was keeping revenue share for 2021 neutral in regards to that there would be no negative balances there. So of course, that legislation hasn't passed or signed, but I wanted to make sure that information got put in there.
All right, let's keep our fingers crossed. Thank you.
Do I have other questions from the committee? Well, anybody else? I do have a couple questions. So Lynn, on page 443 of the PDF, I always get confused about the GAAP accounting standards and how we have to adjust things. Can you explain that to the committee? Because on one hand, we have almost $75 million favorability, and then we have to do something and it looks like we have an unfavorability. So can you explain that process, what's going on?
Right, so if you're referring, like the large number there is the $83 million that deals with planned use of fund balance. Fund balance is the accumulation of revenues over expenditures since the inception of the fund. So there are certain things that the county does plan to use for fund balance, and with the county executive's budget that was presented, it was to be more for one-time type items. So when there are things that are appropriated, items that come before the committee for appropriations that are taking funding out of assigned fund balance, which there were some significant ones dealing with COVID-related activities. That is saying we're appropriating the dollars. We're not getting anything additional in revenue at that time when those appropriations were made. This was before we received the $219 million in CARES Act funding. And we appropriate it from plan use of fund balance. So it's more or less saying we're taking it out of the county's equity. So we have to take that out of consideration because it's not plan use of balance. It's already revenue that's been received. It's not additional revenue flowing in, and that's why we remove it from the calculation on the summary report.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. Just, there are concerns about, stability, fiscal stability during COVID. And where were we at last year at this time, 2019 and 2018, roughly? Is it comparative?
So are you talking about as far as the third quarter forecast is concerned?
Yeah.
Let me grab those reports real quick. So for 2019, for the summary of where we're at, we were planning to, that favorability or that unfavorability at third quarter was 11.4 million use of fund balance. Where we ended up at the end of the fiscal year was a positive balance of around $14 million. And out of that, 10 million of it was carried forward. So a significant amount was carried forward. And I'm anticipating, I think some of that will happen again in 2020. 2018, for the third quarter forecast, it showed that based on the statement at that time, it was a roughly $27 million use of fund balance, where the county ended up in relationship to the closeout of 2018 was roughly a $19 million reduction in fund balance. And a lot of that had to do with one-time type projects, namely one of them being the replacement of the HR and financial system. That was around 13.8 million, and some additional capital improvement projects surrounding safety.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation, and I'm going to recognize Sean.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of things I wanted to just briefly say is, number one, I really wanted to give a big thank you to Lynn and her team during this during this pandemic. Number one, with helping us with the CARES Act and manage all of that. Her team has been on the front line of making sure that each and every one of our businesses and individuals and organizations and nonprofits, that they get their money deposited into their bank account. And that has been a lifeline. And Lynn and her team have been at the forefront of making that happen. On top of that, you just heard Lynn talk about the human resources, the new ERP system that's being implemented in the county. And they have continued to move forward despite the pandemic, to push forward on implementing that. That has created a lot of stress and difficulties. So I want to commend Lynn and her team for that as well. And then just in regards to this, you can see the volatility in some of these line items because of the CARES Act and a lot of spending that's going on. We've got some wide swings here. But I think what you'll see that's fairly consistent is that there will be a favorable variance. We will end the year positive and eliminating that deficit. If you compare quarter two to quarter three in regards to the budget forecast, you can see tick-ups in regards to the favorability, both on the revenues as well as the expenditures. At the end of the second quarter for expenditures, we were at an 18.8 favorability. What you can see on this second quarter here is the favorability on expenditures is at 29.4. So I think Lynn spoke about that earlier. A lot of projects, initiatives may have had to stop. So certainly there'll be some carry forward. So we fully expect to have and close out a balanced budget here. And so I just wanted to most importantly recognize Lynn and all the efforts of her team that's taken place. So thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions from commissioners? I also want to thank Lynn and her team for always navigating regular as well as COVID. I so appreciate all that you do. And if we have the public out there looking at this, I want to make sure that people are assured that we are as fiscally sound as ever, maybe even more so. When you look at cutting our expenses, we did pull in our belts, hiring freeze. We did do things to navigate this COVID proactively, and we will continue to do that. So with that, any other questions or comments? Let's call the roll, please.
And item number 1, Commissioners Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes,
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays.
thank you so much. Item number 2, Human Resources Salary Administration Plan, 4th Quarterly Report for Fiscal Year 2020. I need a motion, please. Commissioner Gershenson, supported by Commissioner McGillivray. And do I have Lori on the call or somebody from Human Resources that wants to talk about this?
Good morning, Commissioners. This is Heather Mason, the Compensation Supervisor with the Human Resources Department. As you are aware, the previous suspension on Merit Rule 2 salary grade reviews expired on December 31st of 2019, thereby opening the field again for departments or employees to request salary grade reviews on positions within and classifications within their departments. On this quarterly report, we have 2 classifications that have been studied, and it affects 5 positions. And I'm willing to answer any questions regarding the determinations that you may have.
Any questions? Seeing none, let's call the roll, please.
On item number 2, Commissioners Middleton,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes,
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Item number 3, Central Services Oakland County International Airport 2020 Airport PFA's Testing Grant Acceptance. I need a motion, please. Commissioner Markham, supported by, I need a support, Commissioner Gershenson, thank you. And with us, we have Cheryl Bush. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are here to present the acceptance of a grant from the Michigan Department of Transportation Aeronautics in the amount of $100,000 to be applied toward testing and monitoring for PFAS chemicals at Oakland County International Airport. We have a work plan developed, and this should more than cover 100% of the cost of that work plan. So we're appreciative of this opportunity. Looking for your acceptance to accept the grant.
I'm going to call on Commissioner Gershenson first.
Thank you. So this, you would be looking for the PFAS in storm sewer areas?
Yes, it would. The concern would be whether or not PFAS had infiltrated into the water systems, the wells or storm sewers.
But you're only looking at the airport.
Yes, this is an aeronautics initiative working with Eagle.
Right. So my question, Madam Chair, is are we looking for PFAS in other areas of the county? And you don't have to answer right now, but it is something I'd like to know about, whether or not I would imagine the Water Resource Department, I would imagine there's lots of potential for PFAS. So I'd like to kind of get an update at some point about where else we're looking for it. And Cheryl, you mentioned that this should more than cover your expenses. What happens to the remainder of money if you don't use it?
We would be applying for reimbursement. So once the costs are expended, we would.
I see. So it's up to.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
The concern at the airport is the concentration of the chemical PFAS in firefighting foam. And that's why it's concentrating at the airport.
Thank you.
So are there other questions? Commissioner Gershenson, you were posing a question to me as the chair, and I also share your concerns about PFAS, but I would like to know if there's other efforts. I'm not quite sure where to direct that question, and I don't know if staff can help me on that or make a suggestion, anybody on the committee. You know, what are we doing for PFAS? We can certainly ask our Water Resource Commissioner. You know,
That would be my suggestion, Madam Chair.
Okay. So ask him to talk about it. Okay. Let's call the roll. I turned off my, please. Pam, do we have you calling the roll? Did we lose you?
I think we did.
Okay, good.
Hi, sorry about that. On item number 3, Commissioners Gershenson,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes,
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays.
thank you. Item number 4, Water Resources Commissioner 2020, Chapter 4, Drain Maintenance Assessment. I need a motion, please. Commissioner Quarles, supported by Commissioner Kowal. And let's see, we have, Mike, are you here presenting?
I am here, and Jeff Wilson is here as well, and I believe Leo Lease might also be present from the
Yes, I'm
fiscal
present.
group. So, yes, thank you, and good morning. We are bringing this morning, we do this annually, we bring our assessments for our Chapter 4 drains, and then subsequently we'll be bringing the Chapter 18 and our lake level assessments. But the Chapter 4 drains are typically our older drains that are specially assessed to the contributing property owners. And these are, we look at the budgets every year, where our expenses are and what our projected expenses will be for the coming year. And the way it's presented, there's 3 different ways it's presented in your packet. One is sort of a summary by drain for the O&M expenses. Then there's one that shows it by community. And then the last one is by project, which is by drain with just a little bit more detail. Jeff, I don't know if you want to speak to any specifics of our assessments for this year before we ask for questions or what?
Certainly. We have several drainage districts being assessed this year, 93, for a total of $735,500. Our largest drain, the Paint Creek drain, is our largest assessment at $75,000. There is ongoing tree removals on that drain. It's about 17 miles of open channel drain up in Brandon, Oxford, and Orion townships. And we plan to continue doing the tree removals. We have a good amount of work up there on those. Those are down trees that have fallen into the channel and are obstructions. And we'll continue doing that throughout the year. We had an emergency repair on the Oak Knob drain. That's a $40,000 repair where we had a pipe collapse, and that's in Bloomfield Hills along a residential street. We had to replace about 120 feet of pipe. And so we did that under emergency conditions and are now collecting the cost for that through these assessments. The rest of them are mostly ordinary maintenance.
Do I have any questions about this? Commissioner Middleton?
Yes, Jeff. Isn't there state law that says that you can collect $2,000 per mile or something like that?
Tom, that's correct. The number is $2,500 per mile of drain per year. With certain conditions, you can up that to $5,000 per mile. And then in an emergency situation, that number is actually whatever the true cost of the emergency is. So that's correct. Ordinary maintenance. So on 99% of these drains, they are capped by those numbers that we just presented. And so there's also a cap to how much can be held in the accounts for these drains as well. So it is, there's not a lot of reserves to work with when issues come up. And you can only collect so much if you want to get ahead of the maintenance. So without that, there's a lot of control, and there's a petition process that really opens up the funding in the event a true project is needed. And this year we don't have any petition projects. We will have one in 2021.
Okay. And you're able to generate 700,000, well, a little less than that because you have an emergency repair, but at the end, stay within the state law?
That's correct. Yeah, we have 93 different drainage districts. And like I said, the Paint Creek is the largest. That one's 17 miles long. So at that point, the cap is $85,000 on maintenance. And we're using a little bit less than that. So we'll continue to do that and get the funds where we can to make sure that these drains are in good working order and are safe for the public.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Gershenson?
Thank you. When you say you collect through assessments, who is assessed?
Oh, I'm
As a
sorry.
resident?
That is a great question. These assessment district type drains, they have land areas that contribute to the drain itself. So it's areas that drain into these, and those residents are then assessed based on the size of their parcel and the type of surface that they have. So if you have more pavement or more building, your runoff number will be higher than if somebody has grass or some sort of forested cover. And so that determines your assessment within the drainage district. And that essentially splits up the pie, and each of these drainage districts have their own unique assessment. And when you pay into your drainage district for the maintenance, your dollars are going only to the drain that you're paying into. They don't go to other drains. So that's why there are 93 unique accounts being assessed.
Mm-hmm. I understand. That one caught my attention because that's in my district. Also, just another question. When you are checking out the drains, are you looking for PFAS?
Generally not. The inspections are much more limited than that. They have more to do with flow and the potential for flooding and the potentials for any damages to the public or public property. Now, Eagle is heading up the PFAS testing in this state. So that's kind of above and beyond. And a lot of times they are looking in the county drains to start the investigations for those types of things. The county drains are usually downstream from many properties. So, they're kind of a collection point for a lot of different things, but it is sometimes a starting point. But the ordinary drain assessments for maintenance and inspection typically wouldn't include something like PFAS testing.
And we have a contract with Eagle? County has or the Water Resource Department has a contract?
We work very closely with them, and so do our communities. So there's a lot of different efforts. I wouldn't say so much a contract as it is more like close interagency workings and potentials for, bringing in this contractor or that contractor or this service and grant and funding opportunities, whatever it may be. There's certainly ways for funds to transfer between agencies.
I might also say that we do have a environmental unit that does outfall sampling and sampling of our at discharge points, looking for illicit connections typically. And at this point, I'm not aware of any efforts to test for PFAS in the drains. Again, I don't know that if there's a program out there that would help to fund that, that would be certainly something that they could add to what we already check for.
And that's with the Water Resource Department.
Yes, we have various divisions within the office. In fact, our water department, I know, has done testing, in the drinking water for PFAS. But as far as the storm drains, the open channels, I don't think we've done anything at this point to check for it there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on this matter? Seeing none, let's call the roll, please.
On item number 4, Commissioners McGillivray,
Yes.
Burrows,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Kowa,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Item number 5, Water Resources Commissioner 2020, Chapter 18, Drain Maintenance Assessment. I need a motion, please. Commissioner Markham, supported by Commissioner Long. Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you. Okay, so I probably should have mentioned when I said Chapter 4 drains, as most commissioners probably know because you've been on the board, is that that's a reference to the Michigan Drain Code. And there's different chapters within the Drain Code under which drains can be created. So Chapter 4, like I said, are some of the older ones, especially assessed to individual property owners that contribute. The Chapter 18 drains are very similar in that they are also specially assessed to the property owners. But it's a little bit different petition process. And right now there are only Chapter 18 drains in the 2 communities of West Bloomfield Township and Oakland Township. They've chosen to utilize that chapter of the Drain Code in their new developments. So again, we're bringing these assessments to the board. There is a county portion for roads that gets assessed to the county, but otherwise it's assessed directly to individual property owners. Jeff, are there any specifics you want to highlight on the Chapter 18 assessments?
Yes, I do. With the Chapter 18 assessments, so these are similar to the Chapter 4s in the sense that they are assessment district type drains assessed to property owners and the county at large on behalf of roads. There are $378,729 total dollars being assessed over 94 different drains. We had 2 emergency situations. One is the Wyndham Point drain. where we had about 180 feet of 12-inch drain that needed replacement. That's in a subdivision in West Bloomfield. So in replacing the drain, we also were replacing, the sod above it and some driveway and sidewalks. And then also the Chelsea Park drain, we had several aging drainage structures. So those are like the inlets you see in the street, the structure that's beneath it. Several aging ones that needed replacement, and several of the structures, while not needing replacement, needed some preventative maintenance. So in all, we worked on 180 different structures in that subdivision. So those are some of the larger assessments that you'll see on the list. And the total, the $378,729, is an increase from last year's Chapter 18 assessments by about $12,000. So a modest increase to last year's maintenance, and as our infrastructure ages, that will continue to increase.
Do I have any questions about this? Seeing none, let's call the roll, please.
On item number 5, Commissioners Quarles,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, Water Resources Commissioner 2020 Lake Level Assessments for Operation and Maintenance. I need a motion, please. Commissioner Kowal, supported by Commissioner Middleton.
Good morning again. So our lake level assessments are very similar to the drain assessments in the sense that we bring these annually to the Board of Commissioners. In this case, there is a requirement that if the assessment exceeds $10,000 that we get Board of Commissioner approval. We typically bring all of them as much a matter of courtesy and letting the commissioners know what's going on in their district and what assessments are being levied. In this case, again, we have 29 separate lake level districts, and those districts are similar to the drainage districts in that anybody who benefits from the lake control structure is in the assessment district and will be assessed. And on lake property owners get assessed differently than off lake, that people who have access. With the things that went on up in Midland with the dam breaks, of course, there's a lot of attention being given. And I know Commissioner Cole, you were instrumental in putting together the resolution that is going to direct us to put together a report. We are in the process of doing that. In fact, I talked to my lake level engineer this morning, and he was out looking at one of the dam structures in Oakland County, not under our jurisdiction. But these districts are all under our jurisdiction. A number of them, we are looking at updating our emergency action plans, and in the next several years, we'll be redoing all the dam break analysis, making sure that, development that's occurred within the county is being reflected in those. Jeff, any other highlights you wanna hit on the lake levels?
Yes, we have 3 of the drains that are updating the emergency action plan. We have the Oxbow, the Pontiac Lake, and the Waterford multi-lakes. Lake level control structures. So that's updating what happens if the dam fails. It's doing an analysis on what would be affected and who needs to be notified, and updating a plan so that in the event that something is happening and you have to initiate emergency procedures, you have everything laid out on exactly what can happen and who needs to be affected. To add to that, there's some significant maintenance going on with the Pontiac structure. There is a seepage issue that is being addressed. The Waterford multi has various maintenance repairs that we've been doing the last couple of years. It's one of our higher assessments. And then Sylvan Otter has an undermining issue on the operator stand for it that needs repairing. And some of these small fixes, they can really get expensive with these structures because you're right up against the water. And when it comes to doing anything, sometimes you have to completely dewater the working site that you're right up against. And so just to do what seems like a minor repair with a small excavator, well, first off, you have to isolate the whole area and keep the water out of it. So small fixes can become big pretty quickly on these structures. And just to clarify, these structures are paid also by assessment districts, typically the fronting lake level owners. And so these are this year's assessments. Any questions?
Do I have any questions? Okay, seeing none, let's call the roll, please.
On item number 6, Commissioners Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank
Thank
you. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. Now we're on item number 7, Facilities Management, Facilities Planning and Engineering, 2020 Roof Replacement Program Project. I need a motion, please. Commissioner
Move.
Kowal, supported by Commissioner Stinson.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear who moved that.
Commissioner Kowal, Commissioner, I had another one. It was Commissioner Gershenson. Okay, and with us we have Art Holdsworth and Ed Joss.
All right, good morning. This is Ed Joss. This project is part of our capital improvement program. It is our annual roof replacement program. The roof that we're doing this year is the courthouse west wing extension. The project was competitively bid. The lowest responsible bidder was Royal Roofing Company out of Lake Orion, Michigan. We have that line item in the CIP has a little over $953,000 in it. After bidding all in, we've estimated this project budget to be a little over $623,000. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Do you have any questions? Commissioner Markham.
Good morning. Well, relative to the statement that you just made, if we're going to have roughly $300,000 left in the pot, what happens to that? Does that allow us to do another roof, or does that carry over to next year, or what happens to the surplus?
So all of those options are still on the table. We just recently received these bids back. I will add that part of the reason why this project budget is lower than what we had in the CIP is because when we put the 2020 CIP plan together more than a year ago, we also planned on replacing the roof out at the Grennan facility out on Brown Road. But that building is now abandoned and that property is for sale. So we've held on that. So that's part of the reason why this came in much lower than we had originally anticipated. But now that we know what we need and taking a look at what we had to work with, we will look at different options, either carrying that money forward to next year so that we can do additional roof work, or administration may want to reallocate those funds to another project.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, let's call the roll, please.
On item number 7, Commissioners Long,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Howell,
Yes.
Zach.
Yes,
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Item number 8, facilities management, facilities maintenance and operations, medical examiners, HVAC pumps and valves replacement project. I need a motion, please. Commissioner Markham and Commissioner Quarles supports.
Joe Murphy and Steve Foster are on the line. They're going to explain why this is a necessary project. The funding was also planned and is in the capital improvement plan for 2020. Joe?
Hi. Hello, this is Steve Foster. How is everybody? These pumps are being replaced because they were original to the building when it was constructed in 1999. They're past their end of lifespan and they're running currently at a reduced capacity while also being a maintenance issue. So the pumps relate and valves relate directly to the HVAC system and the 5 air handling units. So we're asking for approval on this project so that we can replace the pumps and get everything operating 100%.
Do I have any questions? Commissioner Markham?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question relates to HVAC and COVID and, things I've been reading that say long-term ventilation systems may need to be upgraded to keep airflow such that we're not passing diseases to each other. I know this was in the previous budget, so I don't expect to see any of that kind of planning in here, but can you speak to that a little bit? Are we thinking about that going forward? That's my question.
Yep, sure thing. When the COVID situation happened, we worked with a lot of our engineers for best practice to get ahead of the situation, and we upgraded a lot of our majority of our filters where we could get them from like a MERV 9 filter to a MERV 13, which is pretty close as you can get to a HEPA filter. So that is in place. We've took the recommendations to increase airflow in all the buildings where all possible, considering what humidity and weather conditions are outside. And we're also looking at some ultraviolet, other types of mechanical means that we could do to help alleviate any airborne particulates that are in the air. So we are on top of it, looking at it and working with the top people in the country and the industry to make sure our facilities are prepared to do what's recommended.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gershenson?
Thank you. In this project and in the roof project, do you look at sustainability? Do you look at environmentally recommended products? I know there's a lot of creative things you can be doing with roofs. I don't know if this comes into your planning or whether people put forth these proposals to you.
Well, we always make an effort to bid out and select the most efficient equipment systems. The same thing with our roofing materials that we use. Now, we are going to be pursuing a sustainability plan this next fiscal year, which will address exactly the sort of thing that you're asking about, Marcia. Plus, it'll address the funding estimates needed so that we can plan for those things financially as well as part of the capital improvement plan.
I'd really like to see that, Art, because many of us have been asking for that for so many years. And it seems that with new leadership, this is a great opportunity for us to really look at sustainability in our construction projects and in all our updates and renovations.
I agree. April's been a real big champion of this, and I'm looking forward to proceeding in that direction as well.
Any other questions? Seeing none, let's call the roll, please.
And item number 8, Commissioners Kowal,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Sachs.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays. Motion carries.
Thank you. And then I have item number 9, the final item, Sheriff's Office Fiscal Year 2020 Automobile Theft Prevention Authority ATPA Grant Acceptance. And we did get a revised version of it from the committee. And I need a motion, please. Commissioner McGillivray, supported by Commissioner Kowal. And I want to welcome Under Sheriff Mike McCabe.
Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Gaia. I'm kind of doing 2 meetings here right now. I'm also on a HIDA board meeting at the same time, but just real quick background on this. It's a grant that was started in 1986. It's funded by a $1 surcharge on insurance policies. We have 2 teams, one here at headquarters in Pontiac that's supervised by a Sheriff Sergeant and one at Southfield PD that's supervised by a Sheriff's Department. The participants are, of course, the Sheriff's Office, Detroit PD, in a partnership with them. We have a deputy assigned to their task force. They have an officer assigned to ours. We have Farmington Hills PD, Hazel Park PD, Royal Oak PD, and Southfield PD. And then Gail will explain to you what the, there's a typo and other thing that was you guys are fixing for us. And I'm going to step out because I got to go back to that other meeting, and appreciate your support on this.
Thank you. Do you have something else? You're on mute, Gaia.
Thank you. Good morning. So this is our annual auto theft grant acceptance. And first, we just want to thank you for taking this up on such short notice. I think the letter is dated September 10th from the state. However, we did not get an email until Friday at 3 p.m. So we've been scrambling this week to get it through the proper channels, and appreciate Fiscal Services getting the fiscal note done in time. This is quite an involved one since there's so many agencies and a large dollar amount. It's a little over 1.9 million, about 12,600 more than last year. And like the undersheriff said, it continues 13 positions. So I can answer any other questions, but once again, we appreciate the last minute because we requested an extension and they denied it and said we had to have the signed agreement back by September 30th. So we're in a crunch.
Any questions? Awfully easy to get it through, so I don't see anything. So, okay, seeing none, please call the, yes.
Just a reminder, there was an amendment that Michael Andrews had sent to the commissioners that would need to be, because it's different than what Health passed yesterday.
Okay, so I thought that we were passing this as amended with what was sent to us. That was the motion.
Well, since it's not a resolution, we do have to do an amendment.
Okay, so I need a motion, Commissioner Quarles for the amendment, Commissioner McGillivray supporting that. Do I need to do a separate roll call vote on the amendment? So here's the amendment roll call vote.
Okay, on the amendment, Commissioners Markham,
Yes.
Middleton,
Yes.
Gershenson.
Yeah.
McGillivray,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Cowell,
Yes.
Zia.
Yes.
On the amendment, you have 9 yeas, 0 nays.
Now we need a roll call vote on the resolution as amended.
On the resolution as amended, Commissioners Middleton,
No. And for that reason is I run into a problem at the last meeting that if it was unanimous, the committee sending it to us would have never seen the amendment. So I'm voting no, so it won't be on the consent agenda.
Gershenson,
Yes, but Commissioner Middleton, you could request it to be taken off the consent agenda. But whatever's your choice.
Yes, I realize that, but this way I know for sure.
Madam Chair, is this appropriate? Point of order, this conversation in the middle of a vote.
It's not part of discussion. Thank you. So, thank you.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Quarles,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Cowell,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
Zia.
Yes.
I'm sure you have 8 yeas and 1 nay.
Thank you. That concludes our agenda. Is there any new business to come before the committee? Any other discussion or comments? Seeing none, let's close Finance Committee.